Good evening and welcome to another video. Today is Wednesday 24th of August 2016, and in tonight's video I'm going to look ahead and preview the 2016 PDC TABTouch Perth Darts Masters, which is going to take place over this weekend starting on Thursday the 25th of August and running all the way through to Saturday the 27th of August 2016. Now this is the last stop in the World Series before we reach finals weekend, which is going to take place in the Braehead Arena in Glasgow over the weekend of the 5th and 6th of November. So this is the last stop, so players are trying to get that higher ranking in this World Series events. So we'll have 8 PDC representatives in this competition, and we've got 8 Oceanic representatives. Now, 5 of those players played last week in the Sydney Darts Masters, and we're joined with 3 new players who haven't played so far on this year's World Series, to be all making their debuts. So we're going to run through this in chronological order, starting with the PDC representatives. Now we'll start with the number 1 seed, Gary Anderson. Now Gary Anderson had a poor week last weekend in Sydney. It's his first poor week and first poor event in the World Series so far this year. He lost in the quarterfinals to Phil Taylor by 10 legs to 2. He was outclassed in this match. Phil Taylor averaged 100 belt and was far away the better player, but he was very, very poor in his last 16 match against David Platt, which he scraped by with a 6-3 win and a 79 average. It was so unlike Gary, that performance. So he'll have to turn it round in this week, but he will probably be the number 1 seed heading into Glasgow, and that'll be a great boost for Gary Anderson heading into Scotland, being the number 1 seed for the World Series finals. The number 2 seed just now is Michael van Gerwen. The Michael van Gerwen had an excellent weekend last weekend, but he just came up short in the final, losing to Phil Taylor by 11 legs to 9. It's not bad for being in holiday mode. He beat Cody Harris, he beat Kyle Anderson, he beat Peter Wright on the route to the final. So he'll be hoping to repeat the run he got last week. The number 3 seed, Phil Taylor, rolled back the years last year. He continued his run of not losing a competitive match in the World Series in Australia. It was a great weekend for him, and he looked in control in every single one of his matches. He beat Cadby 6 legs to 3. He beat Gary Anderson emphatically by 10 legs to 2 with 112 average. He then followed up with beating Dave Chisnall by 11 legs to 4, and he beat Michael van Gerwen by 11 legs to 9 in the final. That was an important skill for him to beat Michael van Gerwen, because we all know what happened in Blackpool. So it was important that Phil Taylor got that mental edge over Michael van Gerwen as we head into the rest of this year, and he did do so through that 11-9 win. The next player we're going to talk about is Adrian Lewis. Now he's the 4th seed just now, and he lost in the quarter-final last week to Dave Chisnall by 10 legs to 5, but he beat Szabo in the last 16 by 6 legs to 3. In both matches he was under par about 5 to 8 points, so he'll have to improve that if he's to do well this week. The number 5 seed, James Wade, surprisingly lost first round to a local player, Rhys Mathewson, by 6 legs to 5. Rhys didn't qualify for this week's event. He was 5-2 up James Wade and missed 3 match darts, which is unlike James to miss match darts, and he ended up losing the match by 6 legs to 5. The next player we're going to talk about is number 6 seed, Dave Chisnall. Dave Chisnall had another good run in the World Series, and he got beaten in the semi-finals by Phil Taylor by 11 legs to 4. But before that, he had beat Harley Kemp by 6 legs to 1 and Adrian Lewis by 10 legs to 5. The 7th seed just now is Peter Wright. Now he lost in the semi-finals 11-6 to Michael van Gerwen, but he beat Simon Whitlock and Rhys Mathewson on his way to reaching that semi-final. He just didn't have that extra gear in his locker when he had to push up and was pushed by someone. He just couldn't produce the goods. He'll have to do that this week if he to get further in this year's Perth Darts Masters competition. The last seeded player is number 8 seed, it's Raymond van Barneveld. Now he lost in the last 16 to Kyle Anderson by 6 legs to 1. He averaged 91 in this game, but he's not really focused on these events. He's just treating this as a holiday, and we'll see Raymond focus near the end of the year, but just now he's not in a focus mood at all. And we'll move on to the Oceanic representatives. Now we'll start with Simon Whitlock. Now I was disappointed with Simon Whitlock last week. I expected a lot better performance by him. He lost 6-2 in his first round match to Peter Wright. I thought he'd have pushed Peter Wright a lot closer, so he'll have a point to prove this week in Perth. The next player we're going to talk about is Kyle Anderson. Now, Kyle Anderson had a very impressive performance in his last 16 match when he beat Raymond van Barneveld by 6-1. The crowd was elated by that result, but he lost 10-6 to Michael van Gerwen in the next round. It was a very tight match until halfway through, and then Michael van Gerwen just kicked away, winning 5 out of the last 6 legs. Both averages were in the high 90s, so expect to continue that from Kyle Anderson. The next player we're going to talk about is David Platt. Now, David Platt played very poorly last week. He lost 6-3 to Gary Anderson, and I don't know how he managed to get 3 legs in that match. He was putting Gary off by talking on his way back to the board. Now, I expect David to improve because he has to improve. He can't keep producing these performances on the big stage. He must have a better game than this, and expect him to show it this week in the Perth Darts Masters. The next player we're going to talk about is Corey Cadby. Now, I was very impressed by Corey and his last 16 loss against Phil Taylor. I thought there was lots of positive signs in that match for Corey, and I think it'll be interesting to see if he can carry this on to this week in Perth. Now we're going to move on to the first of 3 players which are making their debut in the World Series this year. We'll start with Koha Kokiri. This is his first time playing in the World Series full stop. And he's only ever played once on TV before, and that was the World Championships in January there. In fact, he actually played in December, his first round match. And he lost 3-6-0 to Steve Beaton with a 93.22 average. Now, he's picked up the West Coast Classic title this year, so he's in some decent form this year, but interesting to see how he plays on the big stage. The second newbie this year is Adam Rowe. Now, he's only ever played once on TV before, and that was in this event last year. He played James Wade, and he beat 6-1, and he only averaged 81. So you'll have to banish that performance to the back of his mind, because we all know that he'll have to show a lot better game if he's to compete in this World Series event in his first round match. He became the Pacific Masters champion this year as well, so some decent form this year. And the last player we're going to talk about making his debut in the World Series this year is Kim Lewis. Now, Kim Lewis, again, like Adam before, has only ever played once on TV, and that was in this competition last year. He lost 6-0 to Gary Anderson with a 77 average, but he has played in a big competition before in the BDO. He played in the World Masters 2003, and he lost before the TV stages in the last 192. So again, he'll have to improve his performance in this competition. So what do I think is going to happen in this competition? And we'll start with a proper preview now. I think that Gary Anderson will want to have a good week this week just to confirm why he's #1 seed, and he's got a decent top half draw. If he can get through his first round match, he'll get on a roll, and I think he'll do very well. Also, Dave Chisnall, he's been decent in the last few World Series, reaching many semi-finals. He reaches 3 semi-finals so far in this World Series in the 6 events so far. They've only played 5, but that's going to be the 6 coming up, so that's a good conversion rate of getting to the semi-final. Adrian Lewis deserves a performance. He needs to produce on the big stage and really cement a top 3 or 4 position in the World Series rankings, so he needs a good performance this week. I don't expect Raymond van Barneveld to do much this weekend. As I said before, his focus is on the World Championships and not really on this event. Michael van Gerwen, again, although he's in holiday mode, and saying that, I expect to see a decent performance by Michael van Gerwen to reach the latter stages. I think he'll win the bottom half of this draw, and I think he'll push on and reach the latter stages of this competition. James Wade again needs to show that he's better than he was last week, because getting beat off a local player in Reece Mathewson, I know that's the stigma will probably get to him a little bit, because he does need to try and push for that 4th place and really show why he's on this World Series. I think James needs a good weekend. Phil Taylor against defending that unbeaten run in Australia, so it'll be interesting to see if he can defend that unbeaten run in Australia. It's a hard half of the draw, and he's got Michael van Gerwen in his half of the draw, which will be interesting to see. He also has Peter Wright in his half of the draw. Now, Peter, again, was just a little bit below average. He might change starts this weekend, Peter Wright, because we all know that Peter likes to change his equipment, but he might do so this week. I'd be interested to see if he does do so. I think that Kyle Anderson will be the strongest Australian player and New Zealand player in this competition. I think that he'll go the furthest again this week, and I think it'll be a decent competition, but I think we'll see Dave Chisnall, Michael Van Gerwen final. That's my prediction of the final. And that's what the end of this video. And I think that Michael Van Gerwen will win this competition. I think he'll bounce back, having not won last week. I think he'll win this week. So with that, that's the end of this video. Thank you for taking time to watch this video. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a thumbs up on the video. If you want to leave feedback on this video, you can do so via the comment section below, or via the Tungsten Tackle Facebook, via their website, or via their Twitter. This should be on the Tungsten Tackle website this week. I know there was a little bit of a problem last week, but it should be on this week. And until about an hour's time when I upload another video, I will see you then. Goodbye.